So the issue of grab-and-go bags, the lists are just way too long. Again, I would have to refer you to the book to be able to go through that. But the grab-and-go bag at home is the most important one in terms of all the different things that you have. But everybody needs their own individual grab-and-go bag. You do not want to be using one bag for everybody, because they often, during major disasters, you get separated from each other, and children and women go one place and men go to another. If you have certain critical medications, you need to make sure you have them with yourself. And so don't forget about a grab-and-go bag for pets too, okay? I'm going to skip over that. Now, because we have such a young generation here at this place, this is a particular important issue here, meds to go. One of the things that I hope that your healthcare provider will do, and that is if you say, listen, I need to be prepared for the future. I need to have at least 3 months worth of medication on hand for critical meds. Would you give me 3 months worth of medications? Even if you have to pay for it out of pocket, I would say do that. If they will not allow you to do that, then I would suggest that you do this. Get them to write you a prescription so that you can carry it with you. And then if you have to evacuate or go somewhere else and you get separated from your medications, you can go to another pharmacy in another city, another location, and get those filled. Just remember that controlled substances, prescriptions are good for 6 months. Non-controlled substances, the prescriptions are good for 12 months. And let me just throw in something which is just rather interesting. You can buy a certain amount of pet meds that are actually the same quality for humans, and if it have the same dosage, and you don't have to have the same prescription, you know, if you want to go out and buy those meds. And so you just need to be aware that that's an option. I actually, when I was down in Nicaragua one time with a medical team, some Scandinavian folks had actually sent a whole bunch of animal antibiotics and other meds for animals, and we ran out of meds for normal that we would use for people, and we just were using animal medication. It's just good. There's not a problem with it. So that's a backup measure in case you weren't aware of it. But the idea of keeping a prescription in your wallet or purse that you can take with you wherever you are in case your main source of medication is gone. You also probably should be developing alternative ways of treating yourself, and particularly if you are on certain meds where your life is depending on that, you need to have some alternative knowledge as to what other medicines would actually work or suffice, or even some natural remedies in addition. This is one of the areas in terms of handle with care special needs. This is one of the things that I'm actually calling on churches to get involved with. And in fact, this is one of the things in neighborhood preparedness that I really would like for you to consider right here at Morningside, and any of you that are on the internet right now with live streaming, consider this as well. That if somebody is handicapped or has special needs, you're going to have to do a lot of planning ahead of time. What are you going to do if you have to evacuate them? If people are wheelchair bound, if people are cannot help themselves. My father, in the last couple of years of his life, was actually bedridden. He had a bedside commode. He had oxygen. It was really difficult to move him. And so if ever we had to evacuate, it would have taken several people, as well as the proper vehicle, to be able to get him to be able to leave. Now, I don't know what the situations are around here, but if you developed what I said earlier about having a buddy system, pre-plan who would take care of whom and who's going to become involved. My suggestion would be that if you need help and you know you need help, that you work something out with those that you trust and find someone else that would be a good buddy that would agree to work with you. And I think there ought to be a record kept of who's responsible for whom, because there's going to be a lot of people that fall through the cracks, and those that don't end up having anybody to take care of them, that then they could be worked with other people that took a leadership role here. And in fact, I'm going to jump into something that I think that it would be very important right here, and that is, if you are feeling called, or if you feel like you are someone that really would like to take a lead role in pulling the community together, I would call you a transformer or a champion. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But I tell you what, these ideas that are good ideas will not occur, will not be followed through unless you have somebody that's willing to become a champion for these ideas. I can throw out the idea of having a Faraday cage, a room that would affect everybody, you know, but if one of you doesn't take that idea and run with it, it's never going to happen. You can sit there and say, it's a wonderful idea, let's do it. Okay, look around. You may have to look in the mirror to be able to get it done and say, okay, I'll take care of that. But being able to identify who has special needs, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Home fires is a very, very major issue. And like I said, we just talked about needing a smoke hood. If you actually had a fire, like in these buildings here, or if you had a wildfire outside in the woods somewhere, you can sometimes get trapped. I've known of even experienced firefighters to be trapped. But in the home fires, one of the things that I recommend that you do is you plan at least 2 escape routes. How are you going to get out of your house, out of your condo? The woman that actually helped me with the first edition of the book was an excellent editor, and as she was reading through this recommendation, she said, you know, I live, my bedroom's on the 2nd floor, and the only way out of my bedroom is a wooden stairway going down to the living room. If I had a major fire in my living room and the stairway caught on fire, I don't have any way to get out except I have a balcony on the back, but I have no means of being able to get out. And she was in her 70s, and she just didn't feel like, you know, she can just jump out of the 2nd story. So she said, I've got to get a ladder that would help me get out on the 2nd floor. And so you need to think about 2 ways of getting out. Now, there are some of these places here that you do have access to inside this building, but it all would depend if you had smoke in the hallway or if this place was filled with smoke. How are you going to get out? And that's where I say you need a smoke hood. You also need to have a smoke alarms, and I believe every one of these places does have a smoke alarm. But if you're outside living in a camp or whatever, do you have a smoke alarm in your camper? Do you, in some of the other temporary types of housing, do you have smoke alarms? Another thing is, if you ever have any alternative means of heat, or if you have gas, you need to be very, very careful with that. You need to have carbon monoxide monitoring. That's going to be very, very important. I had a situation with this young pastor in Indiana several years ago that in an ice storm up there in Indiana, electricity was gone, power was gone to their home, and a parishioner loaned them a gas generator, and they put it in their garage, and they vented the exhaust out underneath the garage door. They thought that was going to be adequate. It was not adequate. And during the night, carbon monoxide crept up the inside of the wall, went up into the 2nd story of their home, and they have 3 children, and they were up there at the top story, and the mom and dad stayed downstairs and slept downstairs. But the day before this happened, the wife had felt led to buy a carbon monoxide monitor with voice activation. And in the middle of the night, the alarm came out, carbon monoxide high, carbon monoxide high. The family got up, they got the kids out, they then called the fire department. The fire department came, and they measured the levels of carbon monoxide, and they found out that there were lethal levels of carbon monoxide on the 2nd floor. And they said, had there been a couple more hours gone by, that the children probably would have died. I happen to know that story very well. That was my son and daughter-in-law and 3 of my grandkids. I have 8 grandchildren. I could have had 5. So I have a very real interest in carbon monoxide monitors, and I'm so grateful to the Lord. But the other thing that's important about that story is the protection of the Lord. The Lord laid on my daughter-in-law's heart to get a carbon monoxide monitor and so my family was safe. So if you happen to, in certain situations, it might even be worthwhile to buy a poncho. You know, these hoods that I'm talking about that will help you go through smoke, they will not protect you from flame or excessive heat. They're meant to protect you from smoke. If you actually would need a poncho or something that would protect from heat and flame, you would need to have some sort of flame retardant poncho to be able to use in case of that. But you need to have fire extinguishers. By the way, they have some really neat fire extinguishers today that are aerosol cans that you know, you could put it next to stoves, fireplaces, and otherwise. And I actually saw a video of them demonstrate it. They set a sofa on fire and they put it out with one of these things. It works, but it was kind of comical to see the original video that they had to demonstrate how it does work. But you know, you can use the ABC fire extinguishers and or these cans. I actually have one of these cans in all the important places, near stoves, near wood-burning areas, and you need to have something to be able to protect you should a fire start in your home. I'm going to skip over this pretty quickly here, but you may not be aware of it, but there's a website, 911